Welcome, welcome. This is a response video to questions skeptics have for anarcho-capitalists. Let's begin.
What makes you think that the non-aggression principle would play out in practice? It's something that every person in that society would have to be educated on and abide by. I know you don't advocate for no system of government and no laws, but the mere idea of a non-aggression principle, it just seems outlandish, at least as an expectation for how people should act.
What makes us believe the non-aggression principle would work in practice is the same reason that people believed abolishing slavery would work in practice. It's not about, does it work in practice? It's about, is it morally just? Moving on to the next question, educating people on it. Well, guess what? Parenting is a daunting task. Yes, it is. And guess what? It's all of our responsibilities to raise our children accordingly. When you have a kid, you have to raise it, meaning you have to teach it right from wrong. This is always the case. This has never not been the case. Do you have to teach kids now that slavery is wrong? No. Isn't that something? When people come to moral standards, it just seems to work eventually. Now, do we advocate for no government? I do. I advocate for none whatsoever. There's no need for it. An interesting thing to watch for is Spain right now doesn't have a national government. Keep your eyes peeled. Let's see where that goes.
How would a country defend its borders in an ANCAP system? Do you even believe in the idea of a country?
Though my opinion may differ from some other ANCAPs, I do believe in borders, although it isn't in the sense that it would be like a state border. In other words, I believe in a sense of border as in the notion that anyone coming in trying to stop freedom, to stop anarchism, they are a threat to keeping your anarchism. Therefore, yes, there would be a line somewhere, although I don't believe it would be as black and white as a state line or a government line. In my opinion, do I believe in a country? Well, an area. I wouldn't call it a country because, first off, I wouldn't call any of people in anarcho-capitalism in a nation or a state. Those are words that governments use. They would have communities, sure. Neighborhoods, definitely. The way that all the rules would be might differ between all of them. The point being, if all of them want to keep the way of life that they have, yes, they would have to defend it. So what would they do? Well, we'll get to that in a minute.
How do you expect to maintain a nation state without any kind of a government to defend the borders of said nation state? Do you plan on everybody just as soon as there's trouble taking up arms? What about the people who don't want to fight? Would you force them to defend the homeland?
No, you can't force anyone because that's against the non-aggression principle. But as Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto said, you cannot invade the mainland United States. There would be a rifle behind each blade of grass. He wasn't referring to their military might and the government. He was referring to the fact that the citizens themselves can arm themselves to the teeth. It's a stupid idea to invade a country where people can arm themselves at will. So, do we force people to take up arms? I don't think we would need to. I really don't.
You guys claim that everything that the state does end up in violence. Has there not been a point where the state does not do something that end up in violence?
No, because the state itself is violence. That's the inherent nature of government. Initiative force.
Why do you guys hate taxes so much?
Why do you hate slavery so much?
How do you rationalize the idea that taxation is theft? I know you'll always default to the argument that, well, if you don't pay it, there are people coming to your door with guns to take you away or to take the money by force. But you're forgetting that you participate in a society. And I don't want to be the guy who says that this is some sort of necessary cost of living in a society because of the benefits that it provides. But Have you ever thought about it that way?
Yes, I have thought about it that way, and it sounds kind of like this. Hey, Jim, have you ever thought about the fact that, we got to have slavery because who else is going to pick the cotton? Who else is going to do the farming? Did you ever think about it that way? We can't go done abolishing no slavery because who's going to do it? I can't see the future in innovation when we end slavery because I only look to the end of my nose. So I don't really know what the hell's going to take the place of this moral abomination that we call slavery because I don't want to pretend that it's possible to get past it. That's what I think about it.
If Somalia is not the best example of an anarchist society, then what is?
Well, what's the best example of a non-slavery society before the end of slavery? I know, that's too easy. It's too easy. I'll play your game. Okay, let's go. All right, so what's the best example of an anarchist society? Well, let's see. Spain did it once. They were overtaken by a government neighboring them, but they did not choose anarchy out of a moral stance that they wanted to uphold. It was kind of like, fuck it, we can't do anything else, fuck it. So that's not quite what we're talking about as anarcho-capitalists. We're talking about a moral stance. But anyways, let's go on. More examples. I would say North Sentinel Islanders are a great example. Yes, many people say, well, they're primitive. They're savages. Okay, shut up. They're human. I can't believe you would talk about them that way. They have a way of life that they enjoy that you don't enjoy. So savage is your opinion. They purposely, very much purposely, force others away from their island. The second they see you, they see a boat on the horizon, they start building boats on their shore to come kill you because they don't want any other people to influence them. They don't want it. They like their way of life. Stop it. Go away. Take your innovation and go fuck it somewhere else. Okay, that's the way they are. You might say, well, they probably have a tribal system of a ruler. Yeah, you don't know. You don't know. My point is that if they don't, that's awesome. If they do, okay, I would take that same formula and just remove the rulers. Anyways, moving on. There were actually several Native American tribes that didn't have rulers whatsoever. Not even chiefs. There were some that had no chiefs, nothing. No one was in charge. And the elders only had the power of suggestion. On top of that, some tribes that did have chiefs, the chiefs also only had the power of suggestion, meaning it's not a government because there's no rulers. It is anarchy because, yes, they had rules, but they didn't have rulers. In other words, the chief, the old guy, wasn't going to fucking slaughter you because you didn't follow his rules. He would give you wisdom in a peaceful manner. If you didn't follow, he would allow you to make your own mistakes. This is more like a grandfather and his children than it is a government. So, anyways, there's plenty of examples that it does work. Yes, it was more primitive, I suppose, when it comes to technology, but that's technology has only ever been improving. And in fact, the Native Americans, they were able to go to college alongside colonists. So it isn't that they were savage and stupid. No, they were just as intelligent. Moving on.
How do you expect to keep your citizenry safe from rogue companies, essentially, who want to cut corners at the cost of the consumer and workers' safety?
It's funny, you say that as if that's the case now, and it's not. Yes, we have OSHA. Yes, we have the EPA. However, they failed miserably. If you don't believe that, just simply look up DuPont and see what their history has been in the past 50 years of poisoning people along the Ohio River. The government has failed numerous times at trying to stop these exact problems of harming people. In a country or in a place, a nation or area without a government, how would they stop them? Well, First off, it takes a government to incorporate. If you look up the definition of incorporation, it takes a government to designate such a status. That status is personhood for the business. The point of it is that the owners of the business are now absolved of responsibility for their wrongdoing. That's why they like incorporating, you see. Now, if you don't understand that, I'm sorry, but the point of the matter is they want to absolve themselves from responsibility because then if something bad happens, you sue the company as a person. That's the definition of incorporating. A company becomes a person legally. That's the truth. I'm sorry, it's the truth. Anyways, so say there's no government, none of this stuff. Well, a business can't incorporate. Meaning, if something bad happens, guess who you get to go to? The owner of the business. Let's say it's a local hardware store and a worker drops a crate on a child's head because he's stupid and they hired an imbecile. Well, then that family can go to the owner of the company and say, this is what happened. You owe us big time. A person you hired that you trusted killed our son or daughter, whatever. If he chooses to be all like, I don't give a fuck, guess what? He's not exactly answering to his responsibilities. So there may be different methods that community might choose to deal with said situation. I don't know because it depends on the community. Every community is going to be different. Some communities are going to choose, look, if someone causes the death of someone, it's up to the person not the person they killed, but the people directly related to them to deal with it. Guess what? They can probably go directly to that person and either kill them in retaliation if the community so decides so. It doesn't, I don't know. Maybe the community says, no, you can't kill anyone for killing someone. The point of the matter, the government is out of it. The courts are out of it. It's no longer a question of, what do? They have the best lawyers. Now it's a question of, no, they've obviously been neglectful with who they've hired. They've obviously been neglectful of their business practice. So I'm sorry, but the real way that this type of thing should be handled is not in a court. And you may think I'm grandiose for saying, well, if DuPont is poisoning everyone along the Ohio River, if there were no government, we'd be free to go burn the place to the ground. I'm not saying burn it with people inside. I'm saying, yeah, you block off the entrance and say, you're all not going to work today. We're ending this place forever. It's completely justified. And if you think, how is it justified? They've only been poisoning people for 50 years. How is that attempted murder? Yeah, I'm sorry, it is attempted murder of many, many people. It's very serious, and you should take it serious. The only reason we've gotten to where we are with corporations, and the only reason you have the views that you have about corporations are because of government, not because of free markets. We don't have a free market. We have a corporate regulated market.
If a constitutional republic is not the best way to run a country, what is the best government to run a country?
None.
How do you implement a working ANCAP society?
The same way that you convince people that slavery is wrong and no one should be a slave. Is it difficult? Oh, yeah. But guess what? It's the truth. No one should have initiative force put upon them.
Would an ANCAP system allow me to sell a 9-year-old heroin-addicted child prostitute into slavery?
I'm curious what's stopping you from doing that now, because that already happens. And we have a government. What the fuck is this question?
How does the free market do everything better than the government?
Quite simple, really. The government has never innovated on anything. They haven't invented anything. Only the free market has invented anything ever. So, how do they do it? Well, because in the free market, you have creative, inventive people. When it comes to government, you don't have that. In fact, you have clerks that just kind of sit there and collect a paycheck based on the theft that is your taxes. Cute, isn't it?
How do you plan on maintaining things like hospitals, police stations, and roads without any source of regulation to keep them in order?
Hospitals, they've done much better privatized. There's plenty of evidence for that. If you haven't looked it up, you should. Anyways, the rest, police, roads, that type of thing. First off, police, firefighters, that was voluntary before it was government. So it existed before it was government. Sorry. You don't need it. You don't need government. There was no necessity for it. It was just like, oh, it sounds like a good idea at the time. But it's not a good idea at the time. Anyways, roads, sorry. Did you know that, like, the tax on gasoline is mostly what pays for roads? So look at it this way. If there were no government and the gas companies who benefit immensely on people driving on roads, right? You see where I'm going with this? They benefit a lot from that. What if the gas companies kept the tax? Instead of it being a tax, they would just call it a surcharge so that they could pay the road companies to continue paving roads and filling potholes. Would you go to the pump and be like, fuck you, it's not a tax, now it's a surcharge, I'm not paying this surcharge? Or would you be like, yeah, I kind of need these roads, and the gas companies, like, they band together and pay for these roads? That's much better. I'm not saying that's what they would do. I'm saying there are possibilities outside of government that are non-coercive and logical. So it should make plenty of sense. Moving on.
Why do most of the ANCAPs that I've discussed things with default to the ethical arguments of everything? Nothing is black and white. I don't think everything can be decided on ethical grounds. And I think if it can, it's subjective enough that it can be argued either way.
We look at things ethically because ethics are important to us. Much like the abolishment of slavery, which isn't over, the 13th Amendment allowed slavery in prisons. We look at things in a way that we go, well, if it's not ethical, why should we do it? We shouldn't. And government isn't ethical. So, that's why. It should be pretty simple. I don't see why you don't understand it, to be honest.
If you vote with your wallet, doesn't that mean you get more power if you have more money?
To vote with your wallet, you buy a product. If you want to use your massive wealth to improve said product value, then you would have to spend more of it on the same product, meaning buying the same thing over and over, which people really kind of don't do. So that's
You think that taking the holistic approach medically, rather than a strictly regulated and very well-funded medical sector, is the better way to go?
That's not a question.
If the non-aggression principle is about not inflicting violence onto people, is it safe to say that most people tend to violate the non-aggression principle?
At times, yeah, sure.
So, I suppose my question for anarchists is relatively straightforward. How do you account for power?
Well, based on morals and ethics, you have a right to kill someone who's enslaving you. By enslaving, I mean they're forcing you to do something against your will. So, yeah, go ahead, kill them. Moving on.
What would happen to people who simply cannot work?
If you mean the elderly or the medically disabled, well, the answer is I don't know, because it comes down to their family. So it's like you're asking me, should the government exist just for people who can't fend for themselves? No, I'm sorry. The government shouldn't exist just for the sake of who's going to take care of the people who can't fend for themselves. So, sorry, it's not moral justification for government. Well, who's going to take care of them? I don't know. Family members? People who are related to them? Maybe. Will they be dicks about it? I don't know, man. But are you saying we should have a huge system of people who rule over us just because there are some people who have family members who might not be mentally sound and need some help? Are you saying we have to force everyone into a government just because of that? There's no better way. Yeah, I don't think that's what you're saying.
Okay, serious question this time. how would an ANCAP system deal with water reclamation and sewage and stuff like that?
We'd let the free market deal with it. Oh, by the way, Sid Vicious, a shitty anarchist. He said, we need to respect Margaret Thatcher when she died. Aw, it's cute, right?